the common refrain in the West is that, they talk about Thucydides trap, they talk about the rising power, challenging the status quo power. But what people don't realize, China is actually the status quo power. Because China do not want wars. Because China is a world's largest trading nation, and because war is bad for business, China just want everybody to chill out and do business. So in that sense, China is the status quo power. China want to maintain the global stability. That's not the game the United States is playing, apparently, because the U.S. elite had thought, okay, well, again, this had only way we're going to win the competition is we're going to have to adopt the Tanya Hardin approach. We're going to have to take a baseball to kneecap our opponents, right? And this is what U.S. empire.
大家好，这里是嘎人四绝频道。刚才这段精彩观点点破了中美关系里一个常被颠倒的逻辑。当一些西方声音不断渲染所谓修昔底德陷阱，把中国的发展描绘成威胁时，他们或许忽略了最基本的现实。作为全球最大的贸易国之一，中国最需要的恰恰是稳定、合作与畅通的市场。这一期我们将跟随两位长期观察中国的评论者，从历史记忆讲到现实博弈，深入拆解中美关系为何总被选举政治、贸易保护和地缘冲突推向紧张边缘。新疆议题背后究竟是人权关切还是贸易战工具？美国为何一边高喊重返亚洲 Say， 一边又在西亚泥潭中难以脱身？美元体系、金砖合作、东南亚选择、人工智慧竞赛以及中国真实的发展变化，又透露出怎样的世界格局？当遏制成为一些人的惯性思维，当合作被说成威胁，谁才是真正想维持和平做生意的一方？接下来的正片带你换一个视角，看懂这场大国博弈的深层逻辑。
I respect Mearsheimer a lot, but he has a gigantic blind spot, the size of the continental United States. A lot of the American, thinkers and pundits, when they talk about China, it's almost 100% protection. They're really just assuming China would do exactly what United States would do, because their assumption is United States is a normal country, right? I mean, anybody would like to run a global spanning empire and have military bases all around the world. That's just a human thing to do. That's a normal thing to do. But no, that is not normal. Sometimes American exceptionalism is correct. United States is actually quite unique, an exceptional empire in the human history. Not everybody thinks like the American elite. The American elite thinks, strictly zero-sum, game. For America to win, everybody have to lose, right? And that's not how China approached things. Xi Jinping has repeatedly said the world is big enough for both United States and China to exist. And China's top priority has always been, to focus on China itself, because, it's not like the Chinese leader don't have enough problems on their hands. They're managing the life of 1.4 billion people. They don't need to expand that to be a global hegemon, to be like a global cop. And besides, they can see how great a job United States is doing. Why would you want that? Why would you want that and look at that? Oh, great. I want the one to close the Strait of Hormuz and blow up the world economy. I mean, that, it just doesn't compute. And also, it also doesn't fit the traditional pattern. As a student of history, China traditionally has been a more inward-looking civilization. It's always more concerned about its internal governance because there's a lot to do, with such a large population, then concerned what happens beyond its borders. China do have some interest, China obviously have an interest in regional stability. Because China is now the world's largest trading nation, and war is bad for business. So China, on one, they keep on saying, oh, China, the common reframe in the West is that, they talk about Thucydides' trap, they talk about the rising power, challenging the status quo power. But what people don't realize, China is actually the status quo power. Because China do not want wars. Because China is a world's largest trading nation, and because war is bad for business, China just want everybody to chill out and do business. So in that sense, China is the status quo power. China want to maintain the global stability. That's not the game the United States is playing, apparently, because the U.S. elite had thought, okay, well, again, this has only way we're going to win the competition is we're going to have to adopt the Tonya Hardin approach. We're going to have to take a baseball to kneecap our opponents, right? And this is what U.S. empire has been doing, doing either through proxy war or direct war. And part of that is to, shore up the U.S. hegemony, for example, at least for the last 10 years or so, United States, or this could actually go much further back, but U.S. has been trying to light fire all around the world. So it makes it seem that United States is this island oasis of calm. So you have no choice but park your hard-earned dollars in U.S. denominated asset, like the U.S. treasuries, like the U.S. stock market, like U.S. real estate market. That was a game that we're playing, in the West Asia, for example. So all these Gulf monarchies have no choice but to continue to put their dollar surplus from oil sales to recycle them back into the gigantic AI bubble, right? But, that, of course, that's not working out so well right now because, Kuwait hasn't sold any oil for like a month because of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. But that's not how China operates. China's one of the basic tenets of China's foreign policy. This is something that the West don't really know about or even care about. Is the five principle of coexistence. It's respect of sovereignty, non-interference, right? Non-interference is very important for China because so for China, it's like, hey, you're a sovereign nation, we're a sovereign nation. What you do inside your country is your business. We just, as long as we can respect each other, let's just trade. Let's just have a normal trading relationship. That is how China operates. China do not come to another nation, try to preach universal value or democracy or, that. China does none of that. China says, hey, you have need for these goods and I have need for these commodities. It's a win-win situation. Let's trade. That is how China operates. And this is how China was able to avoid the trap of the U.S. empire of waging endless wars all over the globe for the last 40 years by focusing on its internal development. And I don't see any deviation from that because China do still face a lot of internal challenges. One of the biggest challenge for China right now is its economic transition, the economic transition away from the real estate-led development that has been, the case since forever, for like decades up to 2020. And now the transition to high-end manufacturing, robotics, AI, etc. That transition is still going on. So, China is still very much focused on that rather than, but when U.S. elites saw that, it's like, oh, they're doing this obviously because they're trying to take our spot as the top dog. That's not how Chinese think. They just want to better themselves. But U.S. the elite interpret that as a threat. But that's a just different mentality.
Actually, you touched on my next question when you're talking about the United States wants everyone to park their money in the United States and invest in the AI bubble. BRICS, which has been seen by the United States as a competitor in the US dollar. The use of the US dollar as an international trade tool is set to meet in India September 12th and 13th. And they always discuss, renewed discussions about local currency settlement. Is this likely to dethrone the dollar, or is this just a very slow incremental dethroning? What do you think?
Well, I mean, the de-dollarization is irreversible. The question is the speed, right? Right now, the speed is happening at a speed that nobody likes. Some people think it's happening too fast. That's Marco Rubio, right? Marco Rubio's like, 5 years from now, we won't be able to sanction anyone because they're moving off US dollars. And then, the rest of us probably think it's not happening fast enough. But nevertheless, it's still, the direction is irreversible and it's heading that way. The Brazilian president Lula has famously said, if we don't move off the dollar hegemony, move away from the dollar hegemony, the early 21st century is going to end up just like the early 20th century, which is really a stark warning because early 20th century has 2 world wars. And Brazil itself actually recently took concrete steps. They start to borrow in Chinese yuan rather than US dollars. And this is because now it's cheaper to borrow in Chinese yuan than US dollars because the US dollar interest rate has been going up because the U.S. debt, as you know, is over $40 trillion. But on the other hand, the U.S., the Feds have to keep the interest rate at a certain level so the inflation does not get out of control, right? And they also have to make it attractive for the foreign investors to come and park their money in U.S. treasuries to justify, so by then, you also made the dollar borrowing costs going up more. And this is not just affecting Brazil, it's also affecting United States, by the way. This is why the U.S. debt has been going up because, the way the U.S. government paying debt right now, it's issuing new debt to pay off the old debt. And they still have to pay off the interest on the old debt.
一场关于中国、美国与世界秩序的对谈，表面上谈的是中美关系，实际上触及的是我们应该如何理解一个正在快速变化的世界。节目从重庆在战争年代遭受长期轰炸的历史记忆讲起，提醒我们很多被西方社会忽略的亚洲历史并不是不重要，而是长期缺少被看见。被讲述的机会，历史一旦被遗忘，现实就很容易被简单的叙事取代。而当一个国家只通过新闻标题、政治口号和影视作品去认识另一个国家时，误解也就很容易变成偏见，偏见又可能进一步变成对抗。从节目中的讨论来看，中美关系当前呈现出一种十分复杂的状态。一方面，两国在贸易、科技、金融和地缘政治上竞争不断；另一方面，双方又都需要避免局势失控。美国需要处理国内经济压力、产业空心化以及选举政治带来的情绪动员，中国也需要把更多精力放在自身发展、就业、民生和科技升级上。正因为双方都有现实利益上的约束，所以高调强硬的言辞并不一定等于真正的政策方向，外交场合的友好表达也不代表矛盾已经消失。这也告诉我们，判断国际关系不能只听一个政客在镜头前说了什么，更要观察他背后的利益结构。国内政治周期以及实际行动对外强硬，往往能够在选举中制造简单清晰的敌我形象，让复杂的经济问题看起来有了一个容易指认的责任对象。但制造业流失、收入停滞、社会分化和中产阶级压力，并不是一句中国造成的就可以解释清楚的。真正困难的事情是重新建设产业能力，改善基础设施，培训劳动者，创造稳定而有尊严的工作机会。这些工作需要长期投入，却很难在短期选举中立刻见效，所以甩锅往往比解决问题更容易。节目对新疆议题的讨论也提出了一个值得思考的问题：人权是否可能被政治化？ 工具化，甚至被用作贸易和产业竞争的手段。人权关切本身当然不能被轻视，但任何涉及重大争议的议题都应该建立在充分调查、公开证据和多方核实的基础上，而不是只接受单一来源的结论。对于普通观众来说，最重要的不是立刻接受哪一方的宣传，而是学会追问证据来自哪里，谁在定义问题，谁从制裁、禁运和舆论动员中获得了利益，以及这些政策最终是否真的改善了当地普通人的生活。同样的逻辑也适用于对中国崛起的判断。节目中认为，美国部分战略圈层习惯用自身的历史经验去推测中国，默认一个国家变强之后就一定会追求全球霸权，扩大军事存在，要求所有国家选边站。但不同国家的历史经历、人口规模、发展阶段和安全观念并不相同，不能简单套用同一套模式。中国当然有自身的利益，也会关注周边安全、能源供应、贸易通道和国际影响力。但这并不自动等于它要复制美国的全球军事体系。理解中国不能只看美国如何描述中国，也不能只看中国如何描述自己，而应该把公开政策、经济行为、外交实践和历史背景放在一起观察。美元与去美元化的话题则进一步说明，国际秩序的变化往往不是突然崩塌，而是通过许多细小的选择逐渐累积。美元之所以长期占据重要地位，不只是因为美国经济规模大，也因为它曾经提供了便利、稳定和广泛接受的交易体系。但当金融体系被越来越多地用于制裁和施压时，各国就会重新评估风险，寻找替代性的结算方式。未来未必会出现某一种货币立刻取代美元，更可能是贸易结算更加多元，区域金融合作逐渐增加，世界进入多种货币并存的阶段。这个过程可能缓慢，却会持续影响能源、投资、供应链和国家之间的关系。节目还谈到人才流动，很多华裔科学家和专业人士回到中国，并不一定只有单一原因。有的人看到了中国经济成长和产业升级带来的机会，有的人希望摆脱职业发展中的隐性天花板，也有人因为政治氛围、身份审查和社会不信任而重新考虑生活地点。人才往哪里流动，往往就是哪里能够提供更好的发展空间、更强的产业支持和更稳定的社会预期。一个国家真正的竞争力，不只是能不能吸引人才来到这里，还包括能不能让人才感到被尊重、被信任，并且愿意长期留下。关于台湾、东南亚和欧洲的讨论，则呈现出另一种现实。多数国家并不希望被迫在中美之间二选一，他们希望与美国保持安全和技术联系，也希望与中国保持贸易、投资和产业合作。东南亚国家尤其清楚，地理位置不会改变，供应链和市场也不会因为政治口号而凭空消失。对他们来说，最现实的选择往往不是加入某个阵营，而是尽可能保持战略自主，在大国竞争之间争取更大的发展空间。欧洲同样面对类似难题，当能源、市场和安全都受到外部影响时，真正的问题不是口头上支持谁，而是能否形成独立判断，并为自身利益承担决策责任。最后，节目把话题落到人工智慧。机器人和中国城市生活的变化上，无论人们对不同制度有什么看法，一个事实都不能被忽略，那就是科技正在深刻改变社会。人工智慧究竟会成为提高生产力的工具，还是让少数企业掌握更多权力的手段？关键不在技术本身，而在于谁拥有它，如何监管它。成果由谁分享？一个社会欢迎创新，同时也必须防止技术带来新的不平等。节目中对中国城市交通、移动支付、公共设施、环境治理和老年人社区生活的描述，也提醒我们，评价一个社会不能只看宏大的宣传或负面的标签，还要看普通人每天如何出行、工作、养老和生活。所以这期内容真正留下的启示，也许不是简单判断谁对谁错，而是提醒我们保持信息上的独立。面对任何关于中国、美国、台湾、战争、人权、科技和金融的说法，都应该多问几个为什么，多看不同来源，多区分事实、观点和情绪。世界正在从单一中心走向更加复杂的多中心格局，未来的竞争不会只发生在军事实力上，也会发生在产业、科技、金融、治理和叙事能力上。对于普通人来说，理解这种变化不是为了盲目站队，而是为了在越来越喧闹的信息环境中看清利益，辨别证据，保留自己的判断。如果你也关注中美关系、国际局势以及中国正在发生的变化，欢迎在评论区分享你的看法。 告诉我们你如何理解大国竞争、去美元化、人才回流和人工智慧发展这些议题。也欢迎点赞订阅，继续收看更多精彩视频。